My series of weird Marvel and DC fusions is one of the longest lasting I've got on this channel for sure, but it's one that I haven't gone back to in a little while, and I think the main reason for that is I didn't have a good hook for the next episode. You know, the series started with weird Avengers and Justice League fusions, and I've done weird X-Men Teen Titans fusions, and of course one of the more recent ones was weird Spider-Man Batman fusions, and then I've done a whole bunch of just general character fusion episodes. But for the next one, I wanted some kind of specific hook. Then eventually, when going through comments, I realized I've gotten tons of different requests from people for specific character fusions that would fit into this universe. So I thought, hey, that's a hook for an episode. So today I'm specifically doing 4 new characters that are fusions that have been requested by some of my lovely subscribers. I think there are some fun ideas, and if this goes over well, we'll probably have to do another requests episode. But let's get into this one, shall we? Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. Humans have long experimented on peaceful creatures of nature to create products for the goods of other humans, regardless of the harm it does to the poor animals. But nature has its way of fighting back, sometimes more ruthlessly than we could expect. The creature of the Louisiana swamps, often referred to nowadays as the swamp monkey, didn't have a name when he was the lab subject of a cruel doctor who was using him and several other Japanese macaque monkeys as his test subjects. He was attempting to make compounds that would grant temporary metahuman abilities to people, but was making little progress and regularly killed his subjects with his trials. Lucky for our odd protagonist, before the doctor could make it around to experimenting on him, an injured assassin who'd just killed a local gang leader stormed into the lab looking for a place to hide. The doctor tried to call the police, and the assassin shot him dead. Even luckier for the lab animals, the assassin, named Bryce Holland, was an animal lover. Well, he couldn't take them all back to their home in Japan. He felt the least he could do was set them all free. He opened the cages, and many of the monkeys fled into the swamp. All except for one. This one stayed and watched Holland as the assassin bandaged his wounds and used the lab as a temporary home. He trained with the myriad of swords, guns, nunchucks, and other weapons he had in a duffel bag he'd carried, and this all intrigued the monkey. The two became friends of sorts, even though the monkey had inherent concerns about humans given his history with them. After a week in hiding and recovering, Bryce thought he was ready to leave, when the gang, whose leader he'd killed, found him. They took no chances at Holland escaping and shot a rocket at the lab with Bryce and the monkey inside. The building exploded, sending the doctor's chemicals spraying all over Bryce and our monkey friend. The building collapsed and sunk into the depths of the swamp. Both of their lives should have ended there, but the swamp had different ideas. The mystical energy of the green of the swamp blended with the chemicals splattered all over these fallen primates. Parts of Holland's consciousness were salvaged by the swamp, and the monkey's body was reconstructed by the plant life of the waters. It's hard to say how much of the creature that remerged that day from the waters was Holland and how much was the monkey, but regardless of the blend, the creature was formidable to say the least. It had the fighting skills of Holland and the agility of a superpowered monkey, not to mention the ability to control and manipulate all of nature around him. That night began a new era for the Louisiana swamps. From then on, many tales would be made and told about the swamp monkey, who ruthlessly killed with a mossy green fist any who even accidentally harmed the swamp or the creatures that resided within it. Super Scarlet has had many adventures since coming onto the world stage as a public hero. She helped form the Avenging League and has had many bouts with Loxy Lutherson, Slade Thanson, Sinestron, and many other devious villains. But none were as much of a challenge to her as the colossal, planet-destroying Dumatis. He was a creature from her original dimension, a place that had unlocked all the potential of magic and had advanced science beyond near any other realm. But they'd taken both too far and ended up bringing upon their own reality's destruction. Wandel, who'd eventually become Super Scarlet, and her late brother, Pietel, had been jettisoned from that reality just before its destruction, sending them both to our world. Little did she know, she and Pietel had been far from the only survivors of their home's destruction. You see, for decades before the destruction, a cruel scientist named Galen Bertrand had been using magic and science to try and create the ultimate being, one he called Dumatis. One who could survive in any environment and even cheat death. The scientist subjected the being to hundreds of dangerous events and environments. Dumatis was killed by monsters, diseases, armies, and every time he came back to life, but was never able to die the same way twice. After years and years of this, Dumatis had become so powerful that he was like a near indestructible force of nature, and his regeneration would soon face its ultimate challenge when his entire universe collapsed in on itself. Everyone in the entire universe was killed, including Dumatis, but being cursed with inevitable regeneration, his body kept returning to life. He'd awaken in an empty nothingness, then immediately have his body atomized once more. Eventually, call it a merciful final breath from the fading sentience of his universe, or call it a deadly curse upon our own universe, but Dumatis was ejected from the last glimmer of his reality into our own, now infinitely more powerful from the countless deaths he died. He stood in our reality at nearly 100 feet tall. Spikes spawned from his unbreakable stony skin, and he lusted for one thing only: destruction. He began going from world to world, destroying everything in sight. He'd slay all the surface residents of a planet, tear the landscape to shreds, then dig his way into the planet's core and absorb all the energy within, leaving the planet a lifeless husk. He did this on dozens of worlds before the Iron Lantern Corps took notice. Hal Stark called upon the entire Avenging League to face the threat, but none could hold their own against the monster for more than a few seconds before retreating with major injuries. Except, of course, for the Super Scarlet. She used her incredible strength and speed and magic to its limits and beyond to try and defeat her foe, and she did eventually manage to kill him. Several times, in fact. But every time he came back to life stronger and her previous tactics wouldn't work. Soon enough, they realized all they could do was delay the monstrosity. He'd keep seeking new worlds and keep destroying them, so what was there to do? Eventually, a new hero rose with an idea, one who was willing to lead the creature to worlds lacking sentient life that it could destroy without harming any living beings. It was a solution for a time, but perhaps that brave hero's story is one we'll return to at a later date. What's important for this tale is that someone was finally able to protect the universe from the destructive might of Dumatis. At least, until he runs out of lifeless worlds to destroy. If you asked J.R. Spectre who exactly she was and what her background was, she'd have a hard time telling you. You couldn't even be certain when in her presence that you were conversing with J.R. Spectre or one of her many other aliases. Kendra Grant, Shira Lockley, or even her heroic alter ego, the Moonhawk. All these different aliases have their own distinct attitudes, who would all give you very different answers in conversations. Though, I suppose alias is the wrong word. Better to say one of her other personalities. You see, Spectre has such a serious dissociative personality disorder that it borders on supernatural. Maybe even creeping past that border. See, at a time she was a police officer who became unsatisfied with her work and eventually moved on to military service, quickly rising through the ranks until she became a special ops agent, who would be sent on very dangerous undercover missions. She'd been sent to infiltrate a group of American smugglers who trotted the globe stealing other countries' artifacts and selling them on the black market. She fit herself into their group for a few weeks, learning what she needed to about their previous sales and storehouses. She was close to ready to take them down when they were all in Egypt together, raiding a recently uncovered tomb of the fabled Egyptian deity, Hawkshoe. Unfortunately, while on this raid, the smugglers finally discovered Spectre's identity and killed her on the spot. But her death wasn't final. You see, being killed in that tomb in the presence of the statue of Hawkshoe spurred the god to awaken and reveal himself to the nearly departed soul of Sheara. Thousands of years of his existence flashed before her, seeing that before he was a god on Earth, he was an ancient alien from a warrior planet across the galaxy called Novagar. He told her that her soul, being in a transitive state, allowed him to communicate with her, and that he could grant her his powers and return her soul to her body if she pledged to fight as the avatar of Hawk Shu, and rid this world of the vile beings who do harm to the innocent and the just. She accepted, and as claimed, she reawakened to the shock of the smugglers. The mace of Hawk Shu sprung from the depths of the tomb into her hand and caused a set of gold and white wings to spur from her back. With her newfound might, she quickly slayed all the mercenaries and reset the tomb to its former state of rest. For killing those she was meant to apprehend, Shayara was dishonorably discharged from military service. She returned to her home in New York, where she spent her nights as a vigilante. To aid in her work investigating both street-level and white-collar criminals, she took on different aliases and occupations to blend in to different crowds. But the combination of attempting to maintain these different personas, mixed with the terrible nightmares and thousands of years of memories swirling through her mind from Hawk Shu, slowly weighed on her sanity. The turning point that made her finally snap was when a man with similar wings and a weapon to herself came to find her. His name was Richard Hall, and he claimed to be a Novagarian, from the same planet as Hawk Shu. He tried to explain to her how he was a reincarnation of an ancient Egyptian prince who had also been from Novagar, and how she somehow tied into his destiny, and they were meant to work together as intergalactic police. But it was all so confusing and conflicting with her orders and memories from Hawk Shu that partway through his tale, her mind snapped. She attacked Richard Hall, who defended himself, but eventually deemed it best to leave her be. She wanted no part in whatever he thought she was meant to do with him. Now, struggling to live a mentally stable life while juggling her multiple identities, not even fully sure who she really is, Shayara Spectre continues to fight as a vigilante, trying to serve her world for good, even at the cost of her own sanity. In the year 2099, or at least in one possible future version of 2099, the world has evolved. Technology has advanced, most old heroes who defended the world in our time have retired or sadly died, but of course life goes on, and new heroes gain their opportunity to rise. Miguel McGuinness was one of these such soon-to-be heroes. He was in his late teens and working as an intern at one of the biggest technology innovations companies on the planet, Loxcamax. It was what our modern-day LoxCorp had evolved into, though Loxy Lutherson, while still alive, allegedly had no affiliations with it for some decades. They currently had a contract to develop a prototype military suit that was skin-tight to be worn under regular clothing, made from unstable molecule fabric, and gave the wearer incredible abilities. Miguel had heard rumors that it was heavily inspired by the final suit of the retired hero Spider-Bat, one he donned just at the end of his career. But Miguel wasn't interested in that. He wanted to make technology that could improve the lives of the everyday person. To try working his way up in the company faster, he'd often sneak into one of the labs at night to work on his own original tech. But that meant he found himself the only person on the floor one eve when someone else snuck in. Miguel hid and watched. The man looked nearly 100 years old, but was surprisingly spry. Miguel didn't think he'd have to do anything to stop the man, as the vault that he approached, in which was the highly classified lab where the prototype military suits were being developed, had top-notch security. But the man had the door open in seconds. At that, Miguel ran to the wall and slammed a security button. Alarms blared and the old man ran. But not for an exit. He ran right into the vault, so Miguel followed. What Miguel saw in the vault shocked him. The suit in a glass case at the room's center didn't just look like the Spider-Bat's final costume, it was his final costume. And it looked as though they were just trying to replicate that original suit. The old man smashed the glass and grabbed the suit, but when he whipped around, Miguel was in his way. Despite his shock at seeing the suit, Miguel told the man that he couldn't leave with it. Seconds later, 3 fully armed guards showed up, and upon seeing the suit, began firing on both the old man and Miguel. Miguel dove for cover, trying to say that he'd called them and that he worked there, but they didn't seem to care. The old man put one of the suit's gloves on and quickly used the web functions to wrap up the guards. He then ran over to Miguel, grabbed him, and told him to come with him. Miguel was confused and angry, but he heard more guards coming, so followed. They fled to a small stealthy ship parked on the roof, got in, and shot off into the night. As they flew, Miguel finally got an explanation, one he certainly didn't expect. The old man he'd just fled his company with was Wayne Parker, the original Spider-Bat. His identity had been revealed to the public near the end of his career, and after retiring, he'd become a recluse. Nobody had seen him in years. He'd been enjoying his retirement in peace when higher-ups at Loxcamax found him and came asking to buy his final suit, as they wanted to mass-produce it for military use. He said no, but clearly they hadn't taken that for an answer, as the suit was soon after stolen. Wayne knew Loxcamax's lawyers could spin anything to make sure he never proved they'd stolen it, so he decided to simply retrieve it himself. Unfortunately, now that Miguel had seen the suit, they'd likely do whatever it took to make sure he never let the information out that they had indeed stolen a supersuit from a much-beloved hero of old. Wayne claimed it wasn't even safe for Miguel to return home, as he wouldn't put it past Loxcamax to just have the boy killed to keep him quiet. Miguel was furious at his life seemingly being blown up in the matter of one evening, but he quickly turned to a solution. He asked Wayne to let him don the Spider-Bat suit and investigate Loxcamax. He knew that with time, he could find definitive evidence of their criminal practices, as they must have done many more terrible things than just stolen a suit. If they could bring down the company, then there was no risk of them coming after the suit again, and Miguel could have his life back. It took some convincing, proving to Wayne how cunning and athletic Miguel already was, but soon enough, he agreed, and for the first time in decades, the world had a new Spider-Bat, ready to continue the mythos of the great hero and go beyond anything the world had seen of him before.
Alright, that was a lot of fun. There was a range of really weird requests and some requests that were less weird, but I really like doing the Hit Monkey one because I just started watching that show. I'm definitely open to the idea of doing another round of requests. You know, it'll depend on how well this video does and stuff, but definitely leave me other weird fusion ideas you'd like to see in the comments. And of course, if you're new to this channel and you haven't seen the other episodes in this series, it's something like 12 episodes long at this point. It's been going for about 2 years, so the quality of art does range a little bit, but I think even in the earliest episodes, there's good stuff in there. I'll link the whole playlist in the cards and the end screen and stuff. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or uplifting note. And the one I want to leave people with today is one that I might have used before, but I think it's a really important one, to just remember that you are doing your best. In any aspect of your life right now, whether you think you're doing amazingly or terribly, you are doing the best you can. So appreciate that you're doing your best, and just know that every day you're working on something, you are getting actively better, and your best keeps getting better. Be proud of yourself and be excited to see how much better you're gonna get in the future. Hope that's helpful to someone out there. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.